"You've never been kissed?" the black cowgirl asked, stepping closer to the drifter whose calloused hands trembled against the porch railing under starlight. The wandering man had arrived weeks ago. Another broken soul the townspeople expected would disappear by winter, leaving nothing but disappointment behind. They whispered he was too weak, too lost, destined for an unmarked grave in the unforgiving desert. But the fierce woman who owned this isolated homestead saw something else entirely. She had taken him in, worked beside him, watched him repair more than just her sagging roof. Now, as her question hung in the warm night air, a dangerous truth threatened everything. He possessed legal claim to thousands of acres, including her beloved land. One word from him could make him wealthy beyond measure, or destroy the only person who had ever seen him as worthy of love. Would he choose fortune or the woman who had given him his first taste of belonging? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. Isaac Tiller stumbled into Dust Heart with nothing but dust in his lungs and holes in his boots. The Texas sun had burned him raw during 3 days without water. His torn satchel held 2 coins and a rusted knife. The general store owner took one look at him and turned away. A woman sweeping her porch pulled her children inside. Their stares cut deeper than the desert wind. Daisy Morrow stood outside the post office, her voice carrying across the empty street. She spoke loud enough for everyone to hear about another worthless drifter looking for handouts. Her words followed him like buzzards. Sheriff Tom Easton stepped from his office. His hand rested on his gun belt as he watched Isaac pass. The message was clear: keep moving or face consequences. Isaac had heard it all before. Every town had its Daisy, every sheriff had his look. He was 24, but felt ancient. The orphanage had taught him to expect nothing. The road had confirmed it. At the town's edge sat a lone homestead. Split-rail fences enclosed a small cabin with a sagging roof. A woman worked alone, replacing a broken fence post. She moved with purpose, her strong arms lifting heavy timber like it weighed nothing. Lila Mae Jackson stood 6 feet tall in her work boots. Her dark skin glistened with honest sweat. She wore practical clothes built for labor, not show. When she saw Isaac approaching, her hammer stopped mid-swing. Isaac cleared his throat. His voice came out as a croak. He asked for work. Any work. He could repair things. Lila Mae looked him over like she was measuring lumber. She had been burned before by men who promised much and delivered little. Her property needed help, but trust was expensive. She pointed to his hands. Isaac held them out. His palms showed years of calluses from real work. His fingers bore scars from countless repairs. These were not the hands of a man afraid to labor. The roof above them groaned in the wind. Isaac tilted his head back and studied the warped boards. He could fix it. He knew timber and nails better than he knew people. Lila Mae made her decision. He could sleep in the barn. Food would come if the work got done. If he proved worthless like the others, sunrise would find him walking toward the next town. Isaac nodded. It was more than he had hoped for. That evening, Lila Mae brought him beans and cornbread. She set the plate down without ceremony. The food was simple but filling. Isaac ate slowly, making it last. The next morning, Isaac climbed onto the cabin roof before dawn. The boards underneath his feet told him stories. Some were newer, replaced by inexperienced hands. Others were original, strong oak that had weathered decades of storms. He worked methodically, pulling up damaged sections. In a corner where 2 beams met, his fingers found something unexpected. A hidden compartment had been carved into the wood. Inside lay yellowed papers wrapped in oiled cloth. Isaac's hands shook as he unfolded the documents. The first was a property deed dated 18 years earlier. The name at the top made his blood freeze: Tiller Family Trust. His last name was Tiller. He had never known his parents. The orphanage had no records of his family. But here was proof of something that changed everything. The second document showed a map. The current homestead was just a small piece of what had once been a massive ranch. Thousands of acres stretched across the valley. All of it had belonged to the Tiller family. Isaac sat on the roof holding papers that could make him rich. Below him, Lila Mae worked in her garden. She had bought this land with honest money. She had built her life here with her own hands. Taking his inheritance would destroy her. Isaac folded the papers and hid them in his satchel. He returned to his work with a heavy heart. Every nail he drove felt like a betrayal. Days passed. Isaac proved his worth through actions, not words. He replaced rotted boards, fixed a broken well pump, and reinforced the barn door. Lila May watched him work with growing respect. Evenings brought conversation on the front porch. Lila May spoke about the land she loved, how she had saved every penny to buy it, how she had faced down men who thought a woman had no business owning property, how this place was her sanctuary in a world that often showed her no kindness. Isaac shared stories from the orphanage, how the other children had families to claim them while he remained behind, how he had learned carpentry from the old caretaker who needed help with repairs, how he had been walking from town to town ever since, looking for somewhere to belong. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, they sat in comfortable silence. Stars appeared overhead. The desert air cooled their skin. Lila May studied Isaac's face in the moonlight. She saw something innocent there, something untouched by the world's harder lessons. Her voice came soft in the darkness. She asked if he had ever been kissed. Isaac's face flushed red. He looked down at his hands. The answer was written in his embarrassment. Lila May moved closer on the porch steps. She reached out and gently lifted his chin. Her lips met his in a kiss that was tender and careful. It lasted only moments, but changed everything between them. When they separated, Isaac's eyes held wonder. No one had ever shown him such gentleness. No one had ever made him feel worthy of affection. Lila May smiled. The walls around her heart had cracks in them now. This broken man was mending more than just her property. 3 weeks after their first kiss, Isaac moved his few belongings from the barn to the cabin's spare room. The small space felt like a palace compared to sleeping on hay bales. Lila May had offered it without ceremony, as if the decision was obvious. Their days fell into natural rhythm. Isaac rose before dawn to tend the animals, while Lila May prepared breakfast. They worked side by side repairing fences, clearing irrigation ditches, and strengthening the property against harsh weather. His carpentry skills complemented her knowledge of the land perfectly. Evenings brought shared meals and quiet conversation. Isaac learned that Lila May had worked as a seamstress for 7 years to save money for this land. She had endured countless rejections from sellers who refused to deal with her. When she finally found someone willing to sell, she paid twice what the property was worth. Lila May discovered that Isaac had taught himself to read using discarded newspapers. He possessed a sharp mind that absorbed information like desert sand soaked up rain. The orphanage had provided basic education, but Isaac had educated himself beyond their limited resources. The town of Dustheart watched their partnership with mixed reactions. Some residents appreciated seeing the abandoned homestead come back to life. Others whispered about the impropriety of their arrangement. Daisy Morrow made sure everyone knew her opinion. She spoke loudly at the general store about how certain people should know their place. Her words carried the weight of generations of prejudice wrapped in false concern. Sheriff Easton visited the homestead one afternoon. He claimed to be checking on Isaac's welfare, but his questions revealed deeper suspicions. He asked about Isaac's background and future plans. His tone suggested that drifters who stayed too long wore out their welcome. Lila May stood beside Isaac during the conversation. Her presence made it clear that any threats against him would be threats against her as well. The sheriff left without making direct accusations, but his message was understood. Isaac spent sleepless nights wrestling with the secret documents hidden in his satchel. He had researched his family's history using old records at the town hall. The Tiller Ranch had once stretched from the mountains to the river. His grandfather had owned cattle, horses, and mineral rights worth a fortune. The property had been lost through legal complications after his grandfather's death. Isaac's father had died young, leaving no clear heir. Bureaucrats had divided the land and sold it piece by piece to settle debts and taxes. Lila May's homestead represented only a tiny fraction of the original ranch. But claiming his inheritance would require proving her deed was invalid. The legal battle would destroy her financially, even if she ultimately kept some portion of the land. Isaac began having nightmares about becoming another person who took from Lila May. He saw himself standing in a courtroom while she lost everything she had worked to build. The image haunted him during waking hours. Meanwhile, external pressures continued mounting. Wade Brennan owned the largest ranch in 3 counties. He had been trying to buy Lila May's property for months, claiming he needed her water rights for his cattle. Brennan's offers grew more aggressive. He visited the homestead twice in 1 week, each time increasing his bid. His tone suggested that patience was running thin. Men like him were not accustomed to hearing no from women like her. Isaac watched these encounters with growing anger. Brennan treated Lila May like an obstacle rather than a person. His condescending manner revealed exactly what he thought of her right to own land. The town's social pressure intensified as well. Several women who had previously been friendly to Lila May now avoided her at the market. Store clerks who had once offered credit began demanding immediate payment. Isaac felt responsible for the changed attitudes. His presence had made Lila May's life more difficult. She was paying a social price for showing him kindness. One evening, Isaac found Lila May sitting alone on the porch. Her usually strong shoulders looked burdened. She spoke about feeling isolated from the community she had worked to join. Isaac moved closer and took her hand. Her fingers were rough from honest work, but gentle when they touched his face. They had grown comfortable with small affections. A kiss goodnight. Hands held during evening walks, shoulders touching as they sat together. Lila May admitted she had been alone so long she had forgotten how to trust someone completely. Men had wanted to possess her, change her, or use her strength for their own purposes. Isaac was different. He valued her exactly as she was. Isaac confessed that he had never felt wanted anywhere before. Every place had been temporary. Every relationship had been conditional. With Lila May, he experienced something he had never known. He felt valued not for what he could provide, but for who he was. They began making plans for improving the property. Isaac sketched designs for a larger barn and additional corrals. Lila May talked about expanding their vegetable garden and maybe raising chickens for eggs to sell in town. These dreams felt dangerously real to Isaac. For the first time in his life, he could imagine a permanent future. But the secret documents in his room reminded him daily that happiness built on lies was fragile. The weight of hidden truth grew heavier with each passing day. Isaac loved Lila May too much to destroy her, but keeping his inheritance secret felt like theft from his own future. He was trapped between 2 forms of betrayal with no clear path forward. As summer deepened into its most brutal heat, Isaac knew that decisions delayed would soon be decisions made for him. Wade Brennan arrived at sunrise when Isaac was alone feeding the horses. The rancher's expensive boots crunched across the gravel with purpose. His smile held no warmth. Brennan got straight to business. He knew about Isaac's family history. He knew about the Tiller Ranch. He knew about the inheritance that could change everything. Isaac's blood turned cold. He asked how Brennan had discovered the truth. Brennan chuckled. He made it his business to research property histories. Old land records told interesting stories to those who knew where to look. The Tiller name had caught his attention immediately. Isaac gripped the fence rail until his knuckles went white. Brennan's next words confirmed his worst fears. The rancher had a simple proposal. Isaac could help him acquire Lila May's property through legal channels. A rightful heir challenging an invalid deed would be much cleaner than other methods. They could split the profits from developing the land. Isaac refused immediately. Lila May had bought her property honestly. She deserved to keep what was hers. Brennan's expression hardened. He gave Isaac 24 hours to reconsider. If Isaac refused to cooperate, Brennan would expose everything publicly. He would file legal challenges that would tie up the property in court for years. Even if Lila May eventually won, the legal fees would bankrupt her. The rancher climbed back into his wagon. His parting words echoed across the yard. Isaac had until tomorrow at sunrise to choose between wealth and watching the woman he loved lose everything. Isaac spent the day in turmoil. Every task felt mechanical. When Lila May asked if something was wrong, he claimed exhaustion from the heat. She accepted the explanation but watched him with concerned eyes. That evening, Isaac excused himself early. He sat in his small room staring at the hidden documents. The papers that could make him rich now felt like weapons pointed at Lila May's heart. Sleep was impossible. Isaac walked to the town hall after midnight. The building was empty and dark. He had learned to pick simple locks during his orphanage days when hunger drove desperate actions. Inside the records room, Isaac lit a small lantern and began searching. If Brennan had discovered the Tiller connection, there had to be more information. Isaac needed to understand exactly what he was facing. Hours of searching revealed a disturbing pattern. Brennan had acquired dozens of properties through similar methods. He researched ownership histories, found legal technicalities, then pressured current owners into selling for fractions of true value. When pressure failed, he used courts and lawyers to drain his targets financially. Isaac found records of 3 families who had lost their homes to Brennan's tactics. An elderly couple forced to sell their farm, a widow who couldn't afford legal representation, a young family crushed by mounting court costs. The pattern was clear. Brennan used the legal system as a weapon against people who couldn't fight back. Isaac's inheritance claim was just another tool for the rancher's collection. By dawn, Isaac had made his decision. He returned to the homestead as Lila May was starting breakfast. Her smile of greeting nearly broke his resolve. Isaac sat across from her at their small table. The words came slowly at first, then in a rush. He told her everything, the documents he had found, the inheritance he could claim, Brennan's ultimatum and threats. Lila May's face went through shock, hurt, and anger. She asked if he had been planning to take her land from the beginning. Isaac's response was immediate and passionate. He would rather give up any claim and leave forever than hurt her. The inheritance meant nothing compared to what they had built together. Lila May studied his face for long moments. She saw the truth in his eyes. This was why he had been troubled for weeks. This was the burden he had carried alone. Her anger softened into understanding. Isaac's honesty in this moment proved his character completely. He could have stayed silent and pursued his claim secretly. Instead, he had chosen to trust her with the truth. Lila May reached across the table and took his hands. They faced this threat together or not at all. Isaac felt relief flood through him. Sharing the secret lifted a weight he had not realized was crushing him. Whatever came next, they would face it as partners. Lila May's mind was already working on solutions. She asked to see the documents Isaac had found about Brennan's other victims. If the rancher had a pattern of fraud, there might be ways to fight back. Isaac spread the papers across the table. Together they studied Brennan's methods. The rancher targeted isolated property owners who lacked resources for legal battles. He overwhelmed them with paperwork and court filings until surrender seemed like the only option. But Isaac and Lila May had advantages Brennan's previous victims had lacked. Isaac's research skills had uncovered the pattern. Lila May's reputation in the community could help them find allies. Most importantly, they had proof of Brennan's systematic fraud. As the morning sun climbed higher, their plan took shape. Instead of defending against Brennan's attack, they would expose his crimes. The rancher had made one critical mistake. He had threatened 2 people who refused to be intimidated. Isaac looked at Lila May with new admiration. She had not crumbled under pressure or blamed him for bringing danger to her door. Instead, she had chosen to fight beside him. The woman he loved was about to show Wade Brennan exactly why underestimating her had been his biggest mistake. Isaac and Lila May spent the morning creating a detailed map of Brennan's victims. The records showed a clear pattern stretching back 5 years. Each case followed the same blueprint. Research ownership histories, find legal weaknesses, apply pressure through intimidation and expensive court battles. Their first stop was the Martinez family farm 3 miles south. Elena Martinez had lost her property to Brennan 18 months earlier. She now worked as a seamstress in town, struggling to support her elderly mother and 2 children. Elena answered the door with suspicious eyes. Too many people had made promises they never kept. But when Lila May explained their purpose, Elena's expression changed. She invited them inside her small, rented room. The story poured out in bitter detail. Brennan had claimed Elena's deed contained errors from a surveyor's mistake 20 years earlier. The legal challenges had consumed Elena's savings within months. She had been forced to sell at a fraction of the land's value just to escape mounting court costs. Elena still possessed all the legal documents from her case. She handed over a thick folder with shaking hands. The papers revealed Brennan's lawyers had used deliberately complex language to confuse and overwhelm her. Standard intimidation tactics designed to make resistance seem hopeless. Isaac studied the documents with growing anger. The supposed surveyor's error was microscopic and irrelevant to actual property boundaries. Any honest judge would have dismissed the challenge immediately, but Elena had not been able to afford legal representation that could have exposed the fraud. Their next visit was to Samuel Creek, the elderly man who had lost his cattle ranch. Creek lived in a boarding house now, his life savings destroyed by legal fees. His weathered face showed the strain of losing everything he had worked 60 years to build. Creek's story was nearly identical to Elena's. Brennan had claimed mineral rights issues made Creek's ownership questionable. The legal battle had dragged on for 8 months. Creek had been forced to sell his cattle to pay lawyers, then finally surrendered the land itself. But Creek had kept meticulous records of every transaction. His files contained evidence of Brennan's pattern that went back even further than Isaac had discovered. The old rancher had suspected fraud, but lacked resources to prove it. Creek's eyes lit up when Isaac explained their plan. He offered to testify against Brennan if it meant other families might be spared the same fate. His testimony would carry weight because of his reputation for honesty in the community. The third victim was harder to find. Margaret Walsh had left town entirely after losing her family's homestead. Isaac tracked her to a boarding house in the next county. The journey took half a day by wagon. Margaret's bitterness ran deeper than the others. She had lost not just property, but the graves where her husband and infant son were buried. Brennan had promised she could visit the cemetery whenever she wanted. The promise had lasted exactly 1 week after the sale was completed. Margaret's case revealed the cruelest aspect of Brennan's methods. He had targeted her immediately after her husband's funeral, claiming that property taxes were in arrears. The taxes had actually been paid, but Margaret had been too grief-stricken to organize proper documentation quickly enough. Isaac's research skills proved invaluable in Margaret's case. He found the original tax payment records that proved her innocence. The documents had been misfiled deliberately to support Brennan's false claims. Margaret wept when she saw the proof that could have saved her home. By the end of the week, Isaac and Lila May had documented fraud in 7 separate cases. The evidence formed a comprehensive picture of systematic corruption. Brennan had stolen thousands of acres through legal manipulation and intimidation. Sheriff Easton initially resisted their request for a meeting. He claimed to be too busy with other matters. But when Isaac and Lila May arrived with 3 victims and boxes of evidence, his attitude changed quickly. The sheriff examined the documents with growing concern. The pattern was undeniable once laid out clearly. Brennan had been operating a criminal enterprise disguised as legitimate business practices. Easton's hesitation was obvious. Brennan wielded considerable political influence in the county. Challenging him meant risking career consequences. But the evidence was too strong to ignore, and the victims too credible to dismiss. Isaac played his final card. He revealed his own inheritance claim and Brennan's attempt to use it fraudulently. This made Easton realize that even seemingly powerful people were not safe from Brennan's schemes. If the rancher would threaten a legal heir, no one's property was secure. The sheriff agreed to investigate officially. He would need sworn statements from all victims and complete documentation of each case. If the evidence held up to legal scrutiny, charges would be filed. Isaac spent the next several days organizing evidence into a formal presentation. His experience with legal research from helping other orphans proved invaluable. He created timelines, cross-referenced documents, and prepared witness statements that told a clear story. Lila May coordinated with the victims to ensure everyone would be available for testimony. Her reputation for fairness and honesty helped convince nervous witnesses to participate. People trusted her judgment about taking such a significant risk. The formal presentation to Sheriff Easton took place on a Tuesday morning. Isaac laid out the case methodically, walking through each victim's story with supporting documentation. The evidence filled an entire table and painted an undeniable picture of systematic fraud. Easton studied the materials for 2 hours without speaking. Finally, he looked up with grim determination. Brennan's crimes were too serious and too well documented to ignore. Arrest warrants would be issued by the end of the week. Isaac and Lila May returned home that evening, knowing they had won the first battle. But Brennan would not surrender easily, and the war was far from over. Sheriff Easton arrested Wade Brennan on Thursday morning at his ranch headquarters. The charges included fraud, intimidation, and conspiracy to steal property through false legal claims. Brennan's lawyers immediately posted bail, but the damage to his reputation was immediate and severe. News of the arrest spread through Dust Heart like wildfire. Daisy Morrow found herself with less to gossip about regarding Isaac and Lila May. The couple who had seemed scandalous now looked like heroes who had exposed a genuine criminal. The trial preparations took 3 weeks. Isaac worked closely with the county prosecutor to organize evidence and prepare witness testimony. His attention to detail impressed the legal team. They remarked that he possessed natural investigative skills that many trained lawyers lacked. Elena Martinez testified first. Her calm recounting of Brennan's intimidation tactics created a powerful foundation for the prosecution's case. The jury listened intently as she described losing her family's farm to fabricated legal challenges. Samuel Creek's testimony carried special weight because of his long reputation in the community. His detailed records and careful documentation made Brennan's fraud impossible to deny. Several jury members took extensive notes during his 3 hours on the witness stand. Margaret Walsh traveled from the next county to testify. Her emotional account of losing access to her family's graves moved several jury members to tears. Brennan's lawyers tried to discredit her testimony, but Isaac's documentation supported every claim she made. 4 additional victims testified over 2 days. Each story followed the same pattern of legal manipulation and intimidation. The cumulative effect was devastating to Brennan's defense. Isaac took the witness stand on the trial's final day. He explained how he had discovered his inheritance and how Brennan had tried to use it as a weapon against Lila May. His testimony revealed the full scope of Brennan's criminal enterprise. The prosecutor asked Isaac why he had chosen to expose Brennan rather than claim his inheritance through fraudulent means. Isaac's answer was simple. He had found something more valuable than money or land. He had found a partner who valued him for who he was, not what he owned. Brennan's defense team argued that all property acquisitions had been legitimate business transactions. They claimed the victims were simply bitter about losing fair legal challenges. But the evidence Isaac had assembled made this argument impossible to sustain. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. They returned guilty verdicts on all charges. Brennan was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to all victims. His vast ranch would be sold to compensate the families he had defrauded. The courtroom erupted in cheers when the verdicts were announced. Elena Martinez hugged Isaac and Lila May with tears streaming down her face. Samuel Creek shook Isaac's hand and declared him an honorary member of the community. Sheriff Easton approached Isaac after the trial concluded. He admitted he had misjudged him initially. The sheriff offered Isaac a job as a deputy investigator, praising his natural talent for uncovering fraud and organizing evidence. Isaac thanked the sheriff but declined the offer. He had found his calling working the land alongside Lila May. Their partnership was more fulfilling than any career could be. The legal resolution of Isaac's inheritance took additional weeks to complete. Court documents officially recognized his claim to the original Tiller Ranch properties. The total acreage included thousands of acres that Brennan had acquired through fraudulent means. Isaac's first act as the legal heir was to deed half of all recovered property to Lila May Jackson. The court clerk had never seen anything like it. Young men typically fought to acquire land, not give it away. The deed made Isaac and Lila May equal partners in a ranch that stretched from the mountains to the river. They owned cattle, grazing rights, water sources, and mineral claims worth more money than either had ever imagined possible. But the legal victory felt less important than the personal triumph they had achieved. They had faced a serious threat together and emerged stronger. Their partnership had been tested under extreme pressure and proven unbreakable. Community attitudes toward their relationship changed dramatically after the trial. Store owners who had been cold now offered credit and friendly conversation. Families who had whispered disapproval now invited them to social gatherings. Daisy Morrow made a point of publicly apologizing for her earlier gossip. She praised Isaac's integrity and admitted she had been wrong to judge him based on appearances. Her change of heart influenced other community members to reconsider their own prejudices. Isaac and Lila Mae began planning improvements to their expanded property. They would need additional buildings, more livestock, and hired help to manage such a large operation. The challenges were exciting rather than overwhelming. Their first major decision involved the families Brennan had victimized. Isaac and Lila Mae offered to sell portions of the recovered land back to the original owners at the prices they had been forced to accept from Brennan. This would allow families like the Martinez clan to reclaim their ancestral properties. Elena Martinez wept when they made the offer. She had never expected to see her family's farm again. The chance to buy it back at an affordable price felt like a miracle. Margaret Walsh faced a more complex situation, since she had moved away and started a new life. But Isaac and Lila Mae ensured she received full compensation for her losses, plus enough money to rebuild wherever she chose to settle. The partnership between Isaac and Lila Mae evolved beyond romance into a true business collaboration. They complemented each other perfectly. His analytical mind balanced her practical experience. Her community connections enhanced his research abilities. As autumn approached, their ranch was thriving under joint management. 6 months after the trial, the Tiller Jackson Ranch stretched across the valley like a green carpet. Isaac and Lila Mae had rebuilt the main house, constructed 2 new barns, and installed modern irrigation systems that brought water to previously barren fields. Their cattle herd had grown to 300 head. The horses they bred were gaining reputation throughout the territory for strength and intelligence. Neighboring ranchers came from hundreds of miles away to buy their livestock. Elena Martinez had successfully reclaimed her family farm and was producing the finest vegetables in 3 counties. Samuel Creek used his compensation money to start a small cattle operation that provided beef to local restaurants. Margaret Walsh had chosen to stay in the next county, but used her settlement to open a successful bakery. The community of Dusthart had transformed along with the ranch. New businesses opened to serve the growing cattle trade. Families moved to the area seeking employment and opportunity. The ghost town was becoming a thriving settlement again. Isaac stood on the front porch of their expanded home watching Lila Mae work with a spirited mare in the training corral. Her skill with horses continued to amaze him. She possessed an intuitive understanding of animal behavior that no amount of schooling could teach. A dust cloud on the horizon announced an approaching rider. Isaac shielded his eyes against the afternoon sun and recognized the familiar figure of a lone traveler. The man rode slowly, his shoulders bent with exhaustion and defeat. The stranger dismounted near the water trough and let his horse drink deeply. His clothes were patched and faded. His boots showed holes that let in dust and stones. Isaac recognized the look immediately because he had worn it himself not long ago. Lila Mae joined Isaac on the porch as the traveler approached. She had also seen this type of desperate wanderer before. They appeared regularly now that word had spread about fair treatment and honest wages at the Tiller Jackson Ranch. The man introduced himself as Thomas Webb. He had been traveling for 2 weeks looking for work. His family had lost their farm to debt, and he needed to earn money to bring his wife and children west to start over. Isaac studied Thomas's hands and saw the calluses that marked a genuine worker. Lila Mae asked about his experience with cattle and horses. Thomas had grown up on a ranch before trying his luck at farming. He knew livestock and was willing to learn whatever else they needed. They offered Thomas a job managing their cattle operation. The pay was fair and included housing in the new bunkhouse they had built for hired hands. Thomas accepted gratefully, his relief evident in the way his shoulders straightened. As Thomas settled his horse in the barn, Isaac reflected on how much had changed. He remembered arriving at this same place with nothing but hope and desperation. Lila May had given him a chance when he needed it most. Now they were in position to offer that same chance to others. The ranch employed 12 people full-time and hired additional workers during roundup seasons. Isaac made sure everyone received fair wages and decent accommodations. He remembered too well what it felt like to be treated as disposable. Lila May had become the undisputed authority on horse breeding in the region. Buyers traveled from as far as California to purchase animals she had trained. Her reputation for producing reliable, intelligent horses was spreading throughout the West. Their success had also brought marriage proposals from various community leaders. The pastor had approached them several times about making their partnership official in the eyes of the church. Isaac and Lila May had discussed marriage extensively and agreed it was time. The wedding was planned for the following month. They would hold the ceremony on their front porch where they had shared their first kiss. Elena Martinez was making Lila May's dress. Samuel Creek had volunteered to provide beef for the celebration feast. Sheriff Easton would serve as one of Isaac's groomsmen. The lawman had become a close friend and frequent dinner guest. He often brought legal questions that required Isaac's investigative skills to resolve. Daisy Morrow was helping coordinate the reception. Her transformation from gossip to supportive community member had been remarkable. She now used her talent for spreading information to promote local businesses and charitable causes. As evening approached, Isaac and Lila May sat together on their porch, watching the sunset over their shared domain. The same stars that had witnessed their first tentative connection now looked down on an empire they had built together. Isaac thought about the hidden documents that had nearly destroyed their relationship. Those papers now hung, framed in their study, a reminder that honesty had been the foundation of everything they had accomplished. Lila May reflected on how empty her life had been before Isaac arrived. She had been successful, but isolated. Now she woke each morning eager to share the day's challenges and victories with her partner. Their conversation turned to future plans. They wanted to establish a school for the growing community. Isaac could teach reading and mathematics while Lila May shared practical skills like animal husbandry and land management. They also discussed expanding their help to other families facing situations like those Brennan had created. Isaac's investigative abilities and their financial resources could be used to expose fraud and support victims of legal manipulation. A shooting star streaked across the clear desert sky. Isaac made a silent wish for their future together. He had found something he never expected to possess: a home, a partner who valued him completely, a place where he truly belonged. Lila May squeezed his hand and smiled. She had wished for the same thing.